Hey guys, Merryface here. It's been a while. Now, I filmed my first flight after 2 years without flying, and unfortunately, I can't upload it because my instructor asked me not to, and obviously I'm going to respect that. However, I'd like to talk about the debrief he gave me because I didn't fly too well, but the debrief he gave me was very thorough, and I thought it was really interesting because it brought me back to the very basics of flying, the very first lessons you take when you do the PPL. The first thing we talked about in the debrief was my handling of the aircraft. The Cessna 172 I was flying has a 160 horsepower fuel-injected engine. Now this gave the aircraft quite a lot of inertia when you consider that the engine is quite heavy, as well as the aircraft frame itself. I usually flew on the HR200 previously, a tiny two-seater aircraft that pretty much flies itself. It's therefore unsurprising that I found it quite difficult to maintain a heading and altitude within an acceptable margin. Now let's get to the meaty part of the debrief. Next we look at the taxiing checks. Now I actually looked at all of these, but he wanted me to be a lot more procedural about it. The first thing you do when you start taxiing is test the brakes. You test that they are symmetric and effective. You do this by stopping the aircraft from moving right after you start rolling, and then you test the left and right brakes. Next, you have to test all the systems that are on vacuum pump and that use gyros. You have to make sure that they give the correct indications, that they're moving in the correct direction, and that they are stable. You do this by moving the aircraft nose left and right while taxiing. And then you look at each instrument individually. Once you've finished the engine run-up and you've set up the aircraft for a departure, you can now move on to the departure brief. We do a departure briefing for 3 very important reasons. The first is to stimulate our short-term memory. We can recall, on average, up to 7 items in the short-term memory. Therefore, it's quite important to do a brief as we'll be able to recall important information. The second reason is for situational awareness. Make sure that you know what you're doing, where you are, and what's around you. The final reason is for task management. If you're flying multi-crew or you're flying with an instructor, you need to make sure who is going to do what. Maybe the instructor is going to handle the radio for you because it's a busy day. Or potentially, you need to agree on when you as a student would handle a minor emergency and when the instructor would take over for a major event. Normally you're taught that the departure brief has 2 sections, but I found out through this instructor that you can add a third one. The 3 sections are the takeoff brief, the emergencies brief, and the hazards brief. In the takeoff brief, you're going to talk about 4 essential items: the runway and its condition, speeds you're going to use, the first altitude you need to reach, and the first actions right after takeoff. The emergencies brief has 3 main segments to talk about. It's usually the same for most flights except for special circumstances. First, you need to talk about what you're going to do if you encounter an emergency before V1. In most cases, you're most certainly going to stop the aircraft by performing an emergency braking action. Next, you're going to talk about what you're going to do if you encounter a minor emergency after V1. In most cases, what you're going to say is you're going to take off, fly an adapted circuit around the airfield, and come back in to land. Finally, you're going to talk about what you're going to do if you encounter a major emergency after V1. In most cases, what you're going to do is you're going to land straight ahead at plus or minus 30 degrees. The hazards brief is the extra one. It's the one you don't have to talk about, but it's quite useful. You do this after you finish the first 2 parts of the briefing. It's the opportunity you have to talk about anything that you have to watch out for. Any sort of special weather phenomenons, bird activity, heavy traffic, etc., etc. It's anything that you think could be a hazard. Let's look at an example of a departure brief now that we've covered every element of it. This fictional scenario is at the holding point of runway 11 right at Saint-Cyr-le-Col. We're going to do a north departure for a local flight. Let's listen to the departure brief. We're going to depart from runway 11 right. It's a grass strip and the grass is dry. We're going to rotate at 50 knots. It's also our V1. Our initial climb is going to be at 65 knots. Our cruise climb is going to be 75 knots. Our first altitude is going to be 1,500 feet. We're going to perform a left-hand traffic pattern, and at the end of the downwind leg, we're going to turn to the right to fly over the greenhouses, which is the north departure. For the emergencies, if we have an emergency prior to V1, we're going to perform an emergency stop. If we have a minor emergency after V1, we're going to take off and fly an adapted circuit before coming back into land if necessary. If we experience a major emergency after V1, we're going to land straight ahead, plus or minus 30 degrees. We need to watch out for the weather. It's quite hot today, 28 degrees Celsius, so we're going to have a seriously degraded performance. There's also lots of bird activity because of the weather, so we need to watch out for that. It's the weekend as well, so we've got lots of planes in the traffic pattern, and it's non-controlled right now, so we need to keep an eye out for traffic. Thanks for watching, guys. If you liked, please like and subscribe. I have actual flying videos coming up, not just this kind of stuff, proper flying videos. I have recorded some stuff, and I'm in the middle of editing it, so fingers crossed that it comes out soon. I'm Merryface. I'll see you guys next time, and happy flying.